All right, everybody, welcome to part two of this discussion on early Israeli terrorism. Again, it's so vital that we be acquainted with the history of Israel and how it came about to put into proper perspective what the hell is going on now in Israel. When you see that this state began in terrorism, that terrorism is what laid the foundation for its creation, we shouldn't be surprised in the least to discover that that's all it's ever done is terrorism from day one. They didn't just commit terrorist acts to get the damn thing created. They have been committing terrorist acts ever since they were created. Not only do they commit terrorist acts there, but their minions all around the world are engaged in all kinds of terrorist acts. You don't have to be planning bombs to be a terrorist, right? They've always been terrorists. They've always been terrorizing society economically, politically, with their phony religious holy books, on and on and on, right? They're the destroyers of civilization. And so we've got to document all of their crimes to put into perspective what the hell's going on now. It's because people don't look at history that they don't understand the present. Anyway, picking up in this UN exposure of Jewish terrorism leading up to the creation of the State of Israel. And again, the UN did this only to fool people into thinking that it wasn't a Jewish creation, right? And that you needed to look to the UN when you didn't like things going on around the world, even in Israel. That's what they're doing now, right? They're coming out and saying, oh, we want Israel to declare a truce. The Jewish creation, the UN, is calling for Israel to establish a truce. Right. We need to back up the UN, don't we? Yes. They're our heroes and our saviors. Please. Nevertheless, though, these reports on Jewish terrorism from the UN are true. January 21st, 1947, in London is the next entry we have, picking up from our last video. Here we're told that Dr. Emmanuel Newman, vice president of the Zionist Organization of America, had declared that U.S. Zionists would spend millions to finance illegal immigration of Jews to Palestine. Yeah, there you go. So this wasn't just a few radical Jews that were in violation of the British mandate, right? These were elite Jews across the board that were financing and coordinating this mass influx of illegal Jewish immigrants into Palestine at the time. A Haganah spokesman in Paris at this time claimed that 211,878 Jews had entered Palestine illegally during the past 15 months as of January 21st of 47. Almost 250,000 Jews had illegally been funneled into Palestine just in that previous 15-month period. January 22nd, 1947, in Palestine is our next entry. Sir Henry Gurney, chief secretary, had stated that the British administration was taxing Palestine $2.4 million to pay for, well, I guess it was supposed to be pounds, to pay for sabotage by the terrorists. January 22nd of 47 in London, Colonial Secretary Arthur Creech Jones had informed the House of Commons that 73 British subjects had been murdered by Palestine terrorists, Jewish terrorists, in 1946, and no culprits have been convicted. Yeah, because the Zios saw to that. January 27th of 47, also in London, Britain's Conference on Palestine, boycotted by Jews, had reconvened. Jamal el-Husseini, Palestine Arab leader, had declared that the Arab world was inalterably opposed to partition as a solution to the problem. The session had then adjourned. January 29th of 47, also in London, it was officially announced that the British cabinet had decided to petition Palestine anyway. January 29th of 47, in Jerusalem, Irgun forces released former Major H. Collins, a British banker, whom they had kidnapped on January 26th from his home. He had been badly beaten while held. Later in January, on the 28th, Irgun released Judge Ralph Wyndham, who had been kidnapped in Tel Aviv on January 27th while trying a case. These men had been taken as hostages for Dov Bella Gruner, who was an Irgun member under the death sentence for terrorism. Isn't that very Jewish, right? Release our man, even though he was rightly arrested and rightly tried and condemned as an absolute criminal. Release him, he's our man. Unbelievable, man. Justice is only for Goyim, not for us. And if you don't let him go, we'll kill a bunch of Goyim. The British High Commissioner, Lieutenant General Sir Alan Cunningham, had threatened martial law unless the two men were returned unharmed. January 31st of 47, in Jerusalem, is the next entry. General Cunningham ordered the wives and children of all British civilians to leave Palestine at once because of imminent threats of terrorism, right? About 2,000 were involved. This order did not apply to the 5,000 Americans in Palestine at the time. On February 3rd of 47, in Jerusalem, was our next entry here. The Palestinian government issued a 7-day ultimatum to the Jewish Agency, demanding that it state, quote, categorically and at once whether it and the Supreme Jewish Council in Palestine would call on the Jewish community by February 10th for, quote, cooperation with the police and armed forces in bringing justice to the members of the terrorist groups. This request was publicly rejected by Mrs. Goldie Meyerson, who was the head of the Jewish Agency's political department, naturally. February 4th of 47 is the next entry, also in Jerusalem. British District Commissioner James Pollock had disclosed a plan for military occupation of 3 sectors of Jerusalem, and he ordered nearly 1,000 Jews to evacuate the Rahavia, uh, and two other quarters by noon that day, or by noon of February 6th, 2 days later. February 5th of 47, also in Jerusalem. The Vad Lumi had rejected the British ultimatum, while the Irgun passed out leaflets that it was prepared to fight to the death against British authorities. Listen to how obnoxiously defiant they were, right? Here it was, the Brits had done them a favor initially, right? They secured the area for Jewish immigration. But now that they got enough Jews in there, now they're telling the Brits to leave. When the Brits said no, now they're threatening and carrying out with violent attacks against them to force their hand. The first 700 of some 1,500 British women and children ordered to evacuate Palestine had left by plane and train for Egypt at this very time. British authorities were preparing for military action and had ordered other families from sections of Tel Aviv and Haifa to do the same, to evacuate the area. Anyway, February 9th of 47, in Haifa is our next entry. British troops had removed 650 illegal Jewish immigrants from the schooner Negev at Haifa. And after a struggle, had forced them aboard the ferry Emperor Haywood for deportation to Cyprus. So even the immigrants themselves, who weren't necessarily tied in with Irgun or any of the other terrorist groups, were also quite resistant and obnoxious toward the Brits, right? February 14th, 1947, in Jerusalem is the next entry. The British administration revealed that Lieutenant General Sir Evelyn Barker, that I mentioned in the last video, retiring British commander in Palestine, had confirmed the death sentences of the Irgun members on February 12th that had been captured before he had left for England. The three men, Dov ben Rosenbaum, Eliezer ben Kashani, and Mordecai ben Ahachi, had been sentenced on February 10th to be hanged for carrying firearms in violation of a very clear edict that had been passed, forbidding the carrying of firearms. A fourth one, Chaim Gorovetsky, had received a life sentence because of his youth. So he didn't, they were a little more lenient with him just because he was underage. Lieutenant General G. Macmillan had arrived in Jerusalem on February 13th to succeed General Barker, who was retiring. Anyway, February 15th of 47 in Palestine is the next entry. The Sabbath was the setting for some sporadic outbreaks of violence on this date, which included the murder of an Arab Jaffa and of a Jew in Rue Brock, the kidnapping of a Jew in Petah Tikva, and the burning of a Jewish club in Haifa. So again, they even targeted Jewish facilities, when it was seen that they weren't supportive of their little terrorist cause. March 9th of 47, in Hadera, a British army camp was attacked by another Jewish terrorist group. March 10th, 1947, in Haifa, a Jew suspected of being an informer was murdered by Jewish terrorists. So there you go, see? A whistleblower. He's a Jewish traitor. We hate them as much, if not more so, than the Goyim themselves. So popped him off. March 12th of 47, in Jerusalem, the British Army, the Pay Corps, was dynamited in Jerusalem, and one soldier was killed as a result. March 12th of 47, in Palestine, British military units had captured most of the 800 Jews whose motor ship Susanna ran the British blockade and was then beached north of Gaza on this date. A British naval escort brought the Ben Hecht, the Hebrew Committee of Northern Liberations, the Northern Liberations Front, first known migrant ship. It was brought into Haifa, and its 599 passengers were shipped to Cyprus. Again, more illegal Jewish immigrants. The British arrested the entire crew, which included 18 U.S. seamen. Look at that. They had some, United States minions assisting them with their illegal immigration. March 13th, 1947, in Jerusalem, British authorities had announced 78 arrests as a result of unofficial Jewish cooperation, but 2 railroads had been attacked, resulting in 2 deaths, and 8 armed men had robbed a Tel Aviv bank of $65,000, again, to assist in the terrorist activities, right? But a lot of what was done here was to thwart some Jews that were cooperating with British authorities, right? Again, notice how they're targeting Arabs, Brits, Americans on occasion that weren't cooperating, and Jews as well. March 14th, 1947, in Palestine, Jewish terrorists blew up part of an oil pipeline in Haifa and a section of the rail line at Bir Yaakov. March 16th of 47, in Jerusalem, the Jewish Agency headquarter building was bombed. March 17th, 1947, in Jerusalem, British authorities ended martial law, which had kept 300,000 Jews under house arrest for 16 days and tied up most economic activity all the while. March 17th of 47, also in Palestine, a military court sentenced Moshe Barazani to be hanged for possessing a hand grenade. On March 18th, also in Palestine, terrorist leaflets admitted to the murder of Michael Schnell on Mount Carmel as an informer. Again, another Jew killing, right? March 22nd, 1947, in Palestine, British officials announced the arrest of the known terrorists and the discovery near Petros Tikva of the body of Leon Mesha, who was a Jew, presumably slain as another informer, or at least a suspected one. So apparently he didn't need evidence that this was an informer, just the suspicion of it. We'll kill him anyway, just to send a chilling message. Don't even have anything hint that you're an informant, or, we'll take you out too. March 26th of 47, in London, Britain's Privy Council had rejected the appeal of the death sentence against Dove Bella Gruner that we mentioned a short time ago. So you could see the pressure that was being put on here, right? He was slated to be executed, and now they backed away due to terrorism. March 28th of 47, in Haifa, the Irgun blew up the Iraq Petroleum Company pipeline over in right there in Haifa. Bombs going off constantly, left and right. March 29th of 47, in Palestine, a British army officer was murdered by Jewish terrorists when they ambushed a party of horsemen near the Ramleh camp. A raid by terrorists on a Tel Aviv bank yielded $109,000 on this same date. Look at all the money that was being stolen just to fund their little terrorist activities, right? On March 30th of 1947, in Palestine, units of the British Royal Navy, answering to an SOS call, took the disabled Moladeth with 1,600 illegal Jewish refugees on board. They took it under tow some 50 miles outside of Palestinian waters. Again, more refugees, 1,600 of them. They were coming in by the thousands, right? And even though all these arrests were taking place, death sentences were being meted out. Some were repealed, but nevertheless, the Brits were being as strict with them as possible. It didn't slow down the terrorism. It sped it up, right? Didn't slow down the mass influx of illegal Jewish immigrants. It sped it up. March 30th, 1947, in Tel Aviv, the Stern Gang killed the wife of a British soldier. March 31st, real heroic of them, too, I must add. March 31st, 1947, in Haifa, Jewish terrorists had dynamited the British-owned Shell Mex oil tanks in Haifa, starting a fire that had destroyed a quarter-mile of the waterfront. The more damage, the better, right? They love death and destruction. Like normal human beings, they don't seek to minimize damage, right? Collateral damage. They don't seek to avoid innocent people. They want innocent people to be targeted. The more the better, right? They don't just go after military targets. In fact, more often than not, they go after innocent targets. Look what's going on right now in Palestine, right? Are any of those strikes designed to retaliate against the alleged horrific attack of Hamas. Again, the Hamas attack was an Israeli attack against their own people, right? But even if you go by their official story, let's suppose Hamas was an entirely radical Palestinian operation. Are they going after any radical Palestinians? They're going after innocent civilians, aren't they? Anyway. And why? Well, because A, they love doing that. But B, it's the innocent Palestinians who own territory in the Gaza that they want. Anyway, the damage at this time was set at more than 1 million American dollars. And the British government in Palestine had stated that the Jewish community there would have to pay for it. Good for them. There was still justice back in those days, folks, or at least attempts at it anyway. Not anymore. No, no, no. The Zio-controlled British and American governments kiss their bare ass and roll the red carpet out for them. They not only turn a blind eye today to their crimes, they frickin' assist in those crimes, right? Financially, militarily, especially the U.S., their main little bitch. April 2nd, 1947, in Cyprus, the Ocean Vigor ship was damaged by a bomb in Famagusta Harbor in Cyprus. The Haganah admitted to the bombing. Another Jewish terrorist group, of course, naturally. April 3rd, 1947, in Jerusalem, a court there had sentenced Daniel Azulai and Meyer Lamestein, members of the Irgun terrorist group, had sentenced them to death for the October 30th attack on the Jerusalem railroad station that I mentioned a short time ago. The Palestine Supreme Court admitted an appeal of Dov Bella Gruner's death sentence. On April 3rd of 1947, the transport Empire Rival was damaged by a time bomb while en route from Haifa to Port Said in Egypt. Bombing after bombing after bombing. April 7th of 47 in Jerusalem, the High Court denied a new appeal against the death sentence of Dov Bella Gruner, and a British patrol killed Mosh Cohen. So you can just imagine what that resulted in, right? More attacks. Never did they say, oh, crap, we're really getting punished for our horrible crimes. As much as we love crime, we don't want to get punished anymore. We don't want to see any more. That's what normal people would do, right? Not these bastards. How dare you retaliate against us for our criminal activity? We'll fix you for that. You're supposed to acquiesce and kiss our ass and do what we demand of you. April 8th, 1947, in Jerusalem is our next entry. Jewish terrorists killed a British constable in revenge for the Cohen death. Yeah, there you go. There you go. April 9th, 1947, excuse me, in Palestine, the Palestine government abandoned statutory martial law in the face of unfavorable publicity, but granted itself military dictatorship powers over controlled areas that the terrorists hadn't, scared them into giving up yet. April 10th of 1947 in London, the British government requested France and Italy to prevent Jews from embarking on trips to Palestine, more to prevent more Jewish illegal immigration. April 11th of 47 in Jerusalem, Asher Eskovich, a Jew, of course, was beaten to death by Muslims when he had entered the forbidden mosque of Omar. So apparently this was an Arab counterattack, against Jews. Can't fault him for that. I don't blame him. April 13th, 1947 in Jerusalem, Gwella Cohen, Stern Gang illegal broadcaster, had escaped from a British military hospital. April 14th of 47 in Tel Aviv, a British naval unit had boarded the refugee ship Guardian and had seized it along with 2,700 passengers after a gun battle in which 2 immigrants were killed and 14 wounded. But here we go, another 2,700 illegal Jewish immigrants on board this ship. April 16th, 1947 in Haifa, in spite of threats of reprisal from the Irgun, the British had hung Dov Bella Gruner, finally, and 3 other Irgun members at the Akri prison on Haifa Bay. Jewish communities were kept under strict curfew at the time for several hours, fearing, some terroristic backlash. Soon after the deaths were announced, surprise of all surprises, a time bomb was found in the Colonial Office in London, but was defused. So look at that. Over in London, guys, as they had been planning and talking about for a while, they now took terrorism over there. This one was caught and defused in time to stop it from actually going off. But there they were, working to engage in terrorism. Again, this reminds me of the insurrectionist movement of the first century, right? It began in and focused mainly around Judea to get the Romans out of Judea, right? But ultimately, terrorist acts started occurring right in the capital in Rome. And as time went on, they increased more and more. So much so that, Jews were banished from Rome, right? All Jews. And can you blame them? It sucks that, low-level, average, innocent Jews that weren't a part of any of that had to suffer too. But all the more reason for any decent Jews today to not only disavow yourselves of what the Zio criminal bastards are doing in in the name of Judaism, right? But to stand up against them. These people are your enemies. If you genuinely are opposed to them and not BSing like some of you do, if you genuinely are opposed to them, it's not enough to denounce what they're doing. You got to stand up against them, damn it. There needs to be a rival movement within the Jewish community from Jews who are really opposed. If you really are, do something about it, right? Demand, band together with fellow Jews and rise up against these bastards, because they're going to cut your throats as much as they're going to cut Gentile throats, right? Oh, wouldn't I love to see that? Wouldn't that be awesome? That would be a show worth getting front row seats for. To see a movement, a real rival movement within Judaism by real decent Jews rising up against the elite Jew bastards. Oh, wouldn't that throw a monkey wrench in their works? It has to happen. It has to happen. They're coming after your ass too. In fact, they hate you more than Gentiles that resist them, right? April 17th, 1947, in Palestine, Lieutenant General C. McMillan had confirmed death sentences for two more convicted terrorists, Meir Ben Feinstein and Moshe Ben Barazani, I mentioned him before, but reduced Daniel Azulan's sentence to life imprisonment. He was supposed to have been executed too. Reduced his sentence. There must have been some plea bargaining or something, or maybe just acquiescing because there were threats for more terrorism if he wasn't, if his sentence wasn't reduced. April 18th, 1947, in Palestine is our next entry. Irgun's reprisals for the Gruner execution were an attack on a field dressing station near Nethaniah, where one sentry was killed, an attack on an armored car in Tel Aviv, where one bystander was also killed, and then also there were some harmless shots fired at British troops in Haifa that didn't result in any deaths, but they certainly intended that to be the case. April 19th, 1947, also in Haifa, British naval units had exploded depth charges in Haifa Harbor to prevent an underwater assault by Jewish frogmen on three British deportation vessels that had taken the Guardian's passengers, or were in the process of taking the passengers to Cyprus. April 20th, 1947. Again, you just got to love it, though. How dare you try to stop us from bringing in illegal aliens violating a British mandate law? You know, we'll fix you. You should just be sitting back and letting this happen. Terrorism. When they can't bribe, coerce, threaten, they terrorize, right? Whatever it takes to get their way, and they never stop. Doesn't matter that many of them are caught, many of them are executed. The more you execute them, the more obnoxious they become with their threats and their carrying out of their threats, right? Again, guys, you'd search in vain to try to find a group of people more unscrupulous, more obnoxiously evil than these sons of bitches. You won't find any group ever in all of recorded history. April 20th, 1947, in Tel Aviv, a series of bombings by Jewish terrorists once again, this time in retaliation for the hanging of convicted terrorist Gruner once again, injured 12 British soldiers. They must have been disappointed with themselves. They didn't kill 12 or more. They just injured 12. April 21st of 47 in Jerusalem, Meir Feinstein and Moshe Barazani, mentioned him before, both of them before, the two condemned terrorists that I mentioned, wound up killing themselves in prison a few hours before they were scheduled to be hanged. How do you like that? We're told that they blew themselves up with bombs that were smuggled into them in hollowed out oranges. They brought them oranges supposedly to eat. Well, you know, that is possible that's how it played out. Back then they didn't have metal detectors, right? and probably really inept inspectors of stuff being brought in. Anyway, April 22nd, 1947, in Palestine, a troop train arriving from Cairo was bombed outside of Rehoboth, with 5 soldiers and 3 civilians being killed and 39 persons being injured. April 23rd, 1947, in London is our next entry here. The British First Lord of the Admiralty, Viscount Hall was his name, had defended the Labour government's policy in Palestine and had acknowledged in the House of Lords that Britain would not, quote, carry on a policy of which it did not approve despite any UN action. Again, just the illusion of a difference, with the UN seemingly opposed to the Zio policy. Anyway, he blamed contributions from American Jews to the Palestine terrorists as aiding terrorism there, and cited the toll since August 1st of 45, which was 113 killed, 249 wounded, 168 Jews convicted, 28 sentenced to death, 4 executed, 33 terrorists slain in battles. And, he was saying that American Jewry was responsible for most of this funding. Yeah, you can bet. Viscount Samuel urged increased immigration at this time. So there was some acquiescing going on, either because the guy was a Zio puppet or out of fear of more terrorism, maybe a combination of the two. April 23rd, 1947, in Palestine, the Irgun proclaimed its own military courts to try British troops and policemen who had resisted them. So they set up their own, fake kangaroo courts. April 24th, 1947, in Palestine, Lieutenant General Sir Alan Cunningham, Palestine High Commissioner, flew to Egypt and requested Lieutenant General Sir Miles Dempsey, the Middle East and Force Commander, for more troops to be sent to Palestine to assist with trying to keep law and order there. April 25th of 47, in Tel Aviv, a Stern Gang squad had driven a stolen post office truck laden with explosives into the Sarona police compound and detonated it there, killing 5 British policemen. Horrific. Can you imagine being, a British official sent there to try to keep law and order, and you don't know at any given moment when another bomb is going to go off? They were going off all the time, right? And so, you didn't know if you or somebody you knew, somebody you were close to, a good friend of yours, whatever, a brother, a cousin, was going to get blown away from one moment to the next. And you knew that all the measures taken to try to stop this stuff were actually just increasing it. The next entry here is for April 26th of 47 in Haifa. The murder of Deputy Police Superintendent A. Conquest had resulted in a week of bloodshed, you know, in battles going back and forth as a result. May 4th, 1947, in Acre, the walls of a prison there in Acre had been blasted open by an Irgun bomb squad, resulting in 251 Jewish and Arab prisoners escaping after a gun battle in which 15 Jews and 1 Arab were killed, 32, including 6 British guards, were injured, and 23 escapists were recaptured. Only 23, though, out of 251. The Palestine government promised no extra punishment if the 189 escapees still at large would simply surrender. May 6th of 47 in Jerusalem, former British Commando Sergeant Dov Bernard Cohen, head of the Acre bomb squad, was fatally wounded in the attack. May 4th, 1947, over in New York, the Political Action Committee for Palestine had run a series of advertisements there in New York, in various newspapers, seeking funds to buy parachutes for young European Jews planning to crash the Palestine immigration border by air. Imagine that. And you can bet Jews were planting those ads, of course, naturally, right? May 8th, 1947, in Tel Aviv. And by the way, since, the Americans and the Brits were supposed to be allies, right? Why was it that ads like this, in direct opposition to the Brits, were being allowed to be published, right? How does that happen? It happens when you've got Jew bastards running the whole system. That's how that happens. May 8th, 1947, in Tel Aviv, a Jew was ambushed and shot to death by an Arab group near Tel Aviv. And 3 Jewish-owned Tel Aviv shops, where owners had refused to contribute money to Jewish terrorist groups, were burned down. So there we see more terrorism by Jews against Jews, Jewish shops, because the shop owners would not contribute. Wow, man, oh man. Talk about a protection racket, right? Give us X amount of shekels every week and we won't burn your shop down. They wouldn't pay up, so they burnt them down. Again, guys, it reminds me of the first century insurrectionist movement, right? The scribes and Pharisees had tremendous pressure put on them by the insurrectionists to conform, to go along with the insurrection movement. And when they didn't, they turned against them. Some were assassinated. Ultimately, they, pretended to defect and allied themselves with the Romans, assisted them with intelligence on how to, surround the city and what the weakest points were, so that when they marched in, they would be able to go right in. They knew the weakest points, right? This was all done because of Jews themselves turning against, what they now considered traitorous Jews, right? To take them down. But then, ultimately, they lied to the Romans, having the Romans believe that, oh, they're on our side, they're helping us out, intending fully to infiltrate Rome. And that's what they did, right? The Romans later took them back. Josephus was among them. Josephus was an insurrectionist, but he pretended to defect to the Roman side so that they could, so he could, trick the Romans and have the Romans attack what he wanted attacked, right? The Jewish leadership, he wanted them taken out. And then later infiltrates Rome once he's taken back to the royal court, the imperial court, I should say, to infiltrate it from within. Unreal, man. Anyway, May 12th of 47 in Jerusalem is our next entry. Jewish terrorists on this date killed 2 British policemen. May 12th of 47 in Jerusalem, the British authorities had announced that 312 Jewish political prisoners were being held in Kenya, East Africa, 247 in Leitrim, and 34 in Bethlehem, Palestine. May 15th, 1947, the Stern Gang killed 2 British lieutenants and injured 7 other persons, with 2 derailments and 3 bridges being demolished by Jewish terrorist groups on this same date. May 16th of 47 in Palestine, the Haifa Assistant Police Superintendent Robert Schindler, who was a German Jew, was murdered by the Stern Gang, and a British constable was killed on the Mount Carmel Haifa Road near Jerusalem on this same day. Notice, though, again, another Jew was killed by the Jewish terrorists, right? Because he was deemed a traitor. He was working with the Brits as their assistant police superintendent, right? Unbelievable. May 17th of 47 in Haifa, the 1,200-ton Hagana freighter, known as the Trade Winds, was seized by the Royal Navy off of the Lebanon coast and was escorted into Haifa. And over 1,000 illegal Jewish immigrants were disembarked and were later transferred again to Cyprus. Another 1,000. So there you go, guys. This was constant. On a daily basis, they were intercepting ships with at least 1,000, usually 2,000, 3,000, right? Illegal immigrants, pretty much on a daily basis. And all the while, this would inspire yet more terrorist attacks and retaliation. Anyway, guys, looking at the time here, well, maybe I'll do 1 or 2 more entries. Almost at the hour mark here. May 19th of 47 in London, the British government protested to the United States government against American fundraising for Palestine terrorist groups. What was anything done about it? Again, the U.S. was supposed to be an ally of Britain, right? It was fully well known that these fundraising campaigns were taking place. They were openly advertising in major U.S. papers. U.S. government did nothing to stop it. Just like right now, right? What's going on? It's well known that BB is attacking civilian neighborhoods, right? And what does our government do about it? It assists it. Sends over thousands of our troops to back up this ethnic cleansing terrorist state once again, as always, right? Oh, when I get to the USS Liberty, to the Lavon affair, and you see how U.S. government officials turned a blind eye and a deaf ear. No justice was served, right? When they were fully intent on killing everybody, aboard the USS Liberty. Anyway, the complaint referred to a quote letter to the terrorists of Palestine by playwright Ben Hecht, American League for a Free Palestine, co-chairman, which was first published in the New York Post on May 15th. The ad said, quote, we are out to raise millions for you. And again, guys, this stuff was well known by government officials here, did nothing about it. Here's the Brits pleading now for the U.S. government to intervene to stop this, and yet the U.S. government was totally in league with the whole damn thing. On May 23rd of 1947 in Palestine, a British naval party had boarded the immigrant ship Mordei Hagatoth off of the South Palestine coast, and they took control of its 1,500 passengers. So again, here we have another 1,500 illegal Jewish immigrants trying to sneak into to Palestine. And again, let me remind you, these were obnoxious, elitist Jews that they were recruiting to assist, not in overawing the Arab population. They had already done that, right? No, this was to assist primarily in targeting British officials. Anyway, guys, yeah, we'll stop there, just about at the hour mark. Thanks for joining me, folks. Lots more to come in this discussion. We'll catch you in the next video. Take care.